it is made 3 years. So now when you are being sentenced, 3 years applies. But the reverse thing was there, then it is like that.
Last sentence is 78 subsection
78.
78.
Yes.
From the date of receipt of the order by which such modification is made.
Yes.
So it is,
The
if I
order of
paid
the
earlier,
Commissioner of
then
Police.
yeah.
The order.
If I paid at the detention stage, then this benefit will get, or it is open for me. Suppose I have paid 100 rupees is there.
Yes.
Right? If I paid and somebody same order, he has not paid, and in appeal both are modified. So is it for him also this benefit will get same benefit if I not paid at the stage of order. Once I received the order, I have not paid. In appeal, it is modified.
Right.
Right? So it is available to me,
Yes.
or I should pay at a or after the order I should pay.
I think this is, to my mind,
Because last sentence is
the
saying
benefit of reduced penalty under the first proviso. Okay, now let us see the first proviso which is mentioned there. Your question is that supposing initially
I
you
have
are not
paid.
availed
Huh.
any benefit,
Yeah.
you are not availed of the,
Benefit.
you never intended to work
I have
under
not paid.
this
At the time of
78.
order, I have not paid. What you said, you have to ask him to change the order, making my
Yes.
modification. I think at last sentence.
Actually, this subsection 2 will apply only
Then I
where you have initially availed of that, you availed of that benefit, and then there is a reduction. So it will not apply where you have not initially availed, then it will not apply. Correct? Because it says first proviso. Okay. Now some changes on the setback credit rules, not too many of them. First change is that the time period for availing of setback credit on invoices, which was 6 months, has now increased to 1 year. So one can take setback credit on input services and inputs within 1 year from the date of issue of the invoice. Rule 6.1, this is a very controversial amendment that this is for reversal, pro rata reversal for manufacturers. In the manufacturer's case, the reversal is done with reference to the turnover of exempted goods and total turnover. Like we have for service tax, similarly we have there. So the exempted goods definition there has been amended to say that even non-excisable goods which are sold for a consideration, that value will be added. This will take care of the waste, scrap, dross, all these have been held to be non-excisable. But they are sold by the manufacturers for a consideration. There is no duty payable on that. So they are saying for the purpose of reversal of setback, you must consider that term. This is the only amendment. Now, under Rule 4.7, this is for service tax change. Partial reverse charge. Wherever there is a partial reverse charge and the service recipient is paying tax, say on 50% of the value of service, then the provision now says that if he has paid that tax, he can take credit of that tax. He need not have paid for the services. The value of services need not have been paid. Now, if you read this along with the remaining part, because 50% supposing is paid by the service recipient and 50% is paid by the service provider. Now, that amendment last year came that for service providers, there is no need now for availing credit at my end. I don't need to pay the entire value of the service. Okay? I can take the credit initially. Within 3 months, I must pay for the value of the service. And if within 3 months I have not paid for the value of the service, then I must reverse the credit and then take it again as and when I have paid the full value of services. Now, in so far as the reverse charge is concerned, the provision now clarifies that that 3-month rule doesn't apply. That 3-month reversal rule applies only to the payments made by the service provider and not by the service recipient. This I have already discussed, that job worker, direct movement of inputs to job worker, direct movement of capital goods also to job worker. The Rule 9 says that registered importers can be issuing invoices, and that can be taken as a document for taking credit. Okay, now this is an interesting amendment to Rule 14, which I must say, till 2 days back I thought the rule was simple. Till Jairaj told me a different interpretation of this rule. Now, Rule 14 here is interesting, and it's a CS delight. This is not a lawyer's delight. And it has only come because some CS weren't told the board that, look, how do you calculate? Now, where is the problem? Rule 14 is basically intended to determine the manner of utilization of credit. Now, before looking at the rule, if you see, if you take credit, it is wrong, and you don't utilize it. The interest, the view earlier was no interest is payable because no prejudice is caused to the government. I have taken credit, I have not utilized it, it is lying in my books. So what prejudice is caused to them? So no interest should be payable. But Supreme Court said otherwise. They said no, interest is still paid. So then they amended the section rule to clarify that for interest to apply, the credit should have been taken and utilized. So if it is taken but not utilized, no interest. Taken and utilized, there was an interest liability. So this was one thing they have done. Now comes the complication of determining how do you work out utilization. Because you are taking credits every now and then. And utilization is taking place, the common pool. So it's a typical situation of FIFO, LIFO, or whatever method you want to follow. What the government wants to say here by the amendment is, we'll follow first in, first out. They want to say that if you have taken credit, old credits will get utilized first, later credits will get utilized later. Now this controversy becomes relevant because now you have to charge interest only if the credit is wrongly taken and utilized. So for working out the interest liability, you must know, oh, did I utilize this credit or I utilize some other credit? Okay. So they have amended Rule 14 accordingly to provide that every utilization, there are three facets to this rule. First rule says that every credit taken in the month shall be deemed to have been taken on the last day of the month. That is the first. So credits taken in the course of the month are placed at par. So there is no need fortunately to say, okay, I took on 13th of this month or 14th of this month. That distinction is gone. So you can say, all right, all the credits are bunched together, taken on the last day. So opening balance is one figure, credits taken in the month is another figure, credit utilized in the month is the third figure, and closing balance of the balance is the fourth figure. So you've got 4 figures simplified. So what the rule says now is that in determining whether you are utilized or not, the opening balance should be taken first, as considered utilized first. Then a beneficial provision comes in that the credit admissible under the rules taken in the month are utilized next, and credit inadmissible, that is wrong credits, is utilized last. So on the face of it, it looks very nice. That means they are giving you a benefit. That's fine, even if you have, supposing you got 100 rupees lying in balance, you add 10 more rupees as credit taken, that 10 rupees is wrong. They'll say, fine, you had 100 rupees, why should we demand interest from you? 10 rupees, we'll seek disallowance. There is no problem. Now in the first month, it works very beautifully. Now kindly see what happens next month. Like I think you understood this. 100 rupees is opening balance. 30 rupees credit is taken in the month. 40 rupees utilized. So 100 plus 30, 130. Minus 40, 90. Now 90 is the opening balance of next month. Now next month again 30 is taken, but 40 utilized. So 120 and then 40, 80. Now the intention was that wrong credits of 10 rupees taken in the first month, because you still have 80 rupees lying opening balance. That should not, there should be no interest on that. But the carry forward procedure doesn't say further that the opening balance or the closing balance should be accordingly bifurcated. So once you are carrying it forward, the origin of that money is now merged, is become part of a common pool. So the only 1 month benefit you will get. In the first month of credit you will get the benefit. Next month onward there will be a problem. So this will have to be clarified. I think this is a rumor which they didn't, because they are not used to this FIFO and LIFO. If you go to the CBEC or ministry and say I am talking about FIFO, they say what are you talking about? They don't understand it. So they have tried to simplify it, but they have overlooked the fact that you have to also provide that there has to be an aging of credits in the opening balance also. How it is arisen, you have to bifurcate. Now there is another aspect which Gerard had mentioned to me, which is interesting. Gerard Bhai said that in Rule 14(2), it says all credits taken during a month shall be deemed to have been taken on the last day of month, and utilization thereof shall be deemed to, you got that? 2. Subsection, subrule 2. For the purposes of subrule 1, all credits taken during a month shall be deemed to have been taken on the last day of the month, and utilization thereof shall be deemed to have occurred in the following manner. Opening balance first, admissible credit, and then inadmissible credit. Now, can you say, looking at this rule, can one say that all credits taken in the month, even if they are wrong, are deemed to have been utilized also in that month? Because under subsection subrule 2, they use the word for the purposes of subrule 1. Now 1 has 2 parts. Credit, where credit has been taken wrongly but not utilized, is part 1, small I, and small 2i in the middle of 1 is where credit has been taken and utilized wrongly or has been erroneously refunded, the same shall be. So one is taken, not utilized, clause 1, taken and utilized, clause 2. And subrule 2, which was intended to apply only to clause 2, uses the word for the purposes of subrule 1. That means technically applies to both 1 and 2. If it applies to both 1 and 2, then somebody can read the deeming provision to say that the credit taken, wrongly taken in clause 1 is also deemed to have been utilized in the same month. I think it is unintended. It can cause confusion, no doubt. This needs to be either clarified or slightly amended. So this is one lacuna which Gerard Bhai in fact informed me yesterday. So this is, I don't think it is intended that, otherwise the whole rule becomes quite meaningless. So we will have to amend it. Now, sorry.
So in the previous slide, take a case, I had a bill dated 8th March 2014. By virtue of the new provisions, I can now take similar in 1 year. Today, as on 7th March, if I want to pass it into my books to take that credit, I am actually eligible. But this deeming provision puts it that it will be deemed to have taken on the last day, which will be 31st March. Now 1 year time will hit me. So there will be relief to that extent.
See, I think when they are saying that it shall be deemed to have been taken in the last month, on the last day, it is only for the purpose of calculation of interest liability. It is limited for that purpose. For the purposes of subsection, subrule 1. So it doesn't take away the right. It is only for calculation purposes. Okay. Just two, I already discussed the issues. First issue I had left out, I had not discussed. That now education cess and higher education cess is not leviable on manufacturers. What happens to the balances which are lying in the books. There is no provision here to say that that can be used for payment of other duties, basic duty or something else. So that is one area which is left open. Yeah.
Even service tax education says CSS is not cancelled, so existing balance must accruing on input services. Or that is the point.
Yeah. So you are saying that education cess for excise as well as service tax.
Excise is gone.
Ah.
Service tax is still continuing. For a manufacturing input service, so again it is existing balance plus this will be accrued.
Correct, correct. So you will have more accrual in future also. Correct. Because on the service tax side, you will. But service tax is gone now.
No, what he's saying is, a manufacturer continuing to procure services,
Right.
keep on paying, she says, and he says on services, which balance will get accumulated.
Why will it pay? Because now it's gone.
No, on services, which he procures, he is paying cess. So what will he do with that balance?
No,
Because he-
now under the now it's 14%.
No, 40% yet to be notified.
Okay, and then
Till the
you're
time
talking
we
only for
notify.
that much. Okay.
Up to the time it is notified,
You're
what
not-
will happen to
Yeah.
that continuing
That's fine.
accrual
For the
of
moment,
cess and cess?
it will not have any there is no utilization possible.
So his point is,
Yeah.
not only the opening balance, but also the balance up to the date of notification where
Correct.
that service is
I agree.
consumed in service.
Suppose the notifications comes and the rate will be changed to 14%, then what about the closing input which we are having service tax, education and secondary education? Because service tax we can adjust with education and secondary education, but education bill will not adjust it with service tax. So what will be done for that exactly?
This part went around.
See, service tax, suppose you are having balances of service tax, you can adjust it with education and secondary education.
Yeah.
But the provision is not, does not say that you can adjust says secondary education and education with service tax.
Correct.
So when 14% rate will come, at that time suppose I am having this in my return I am having
Yeah, so you will
balances
not
of
utilize.
education and secondary education. So that
That
is gone.
is exactly the point we are making. That you cannot use credits accruing under this education cess for payment of any tax other than
Other
education.
than education says yes.
So therefore it will remain as a balance, and the industry demand is exactly this, that how can you allow it to lapse like this? There are Supreme Court ruling saying that it is an accrued right, indefeasible right. If you have acquired that right, in fact in the past when they amended the rules to block the balances lying in unutilized, the Supreme Court on 2 occasions struck it down. They have said it's a right which is already yours, and that right is indefeasible. That's the phraseology they use. So they will have to provide for utilization somewhere.
Sunday, Mr. Solanki, earlier days it is brought to their notice and they are talking to them.
They will have to, because Supreme Court in 2 cases has said that. So if they don't do it, again there will be a striking down of this provision.
Something will come within a very few times.
Sir, can you take benefit from the budget speech where the finance minister said that this cess will be subsumed within that 14%? So can you take a relief that education cess and CSS is inclusive in that 14% and then utilize it?
See, I think you are, I don't think he was referring to this. What he meant was at the rate of tax, it is being subsumed. But even otherwise, as Redbhai is saying, they will have to amend this part. Okay, there is no option. Because this much they know that it will be struck down immediately. What else? Anything else? Or with this I'll conclude my talk. Thank you very much. Well, friends,